you're like a sort of human lie detector. I'm curious to for you to give us some of the examples that you offer us in the book about what certain movements, what certain touches, what they indicate. I mean, just for example, an obvious one where we furrow the brows suggests this. But when we touch our eyelids, for example.
So, first of all, let me just say this, and I've been teaching this now since 1984. There is no single behavior indicative of deception. What humans are really good at is transmitting that we have issues and at observing it. So when we don't understand something, we furrow this little area between the eyes called the glabella. So we go, what? Or, I'm not sure I agree with that. We tend to touch our face a lot because it's a very quick pacifier. The fifth cranial nerves, which innervate the face, both the in the ophthalmic area, but also down here in the mandibular area. This is why we touch. It's like, really, we touch our face all day long because it pacifies us. What I look for is when is the subject brought up, and then all of a sudden there's more pacifiers. You'll see people all of a sudden, you ask them a question and they go from touching their face to scratching their face. Wow. Really? I just wanted to know, where were you last night? Why do you go from touching to scratching? It's not that they're lying. It's like the guy I told you about with the cigarette. The cigarette shook because the name of the person arrested was a threat. And it causes psychological discomfort. So I look for the indicators of psychological discomfort: the compressing of the lips, jaw shifting. You say, well, we have photographs of the bank robbery. Jaw shifts. It doesn't mean they're deceptive. It means that they're concerned about something. And we see the jaw shifting in that, the eyelid blocking, right? So you say, hey, Matthew, how about helping me move tomorrow? And you go, yeah, I'd love to, Joe, but you know what, buddy, I know what it means. The minute we begin to touch our eyes like this, it means something's not right. Now, you may do it because we get along and so forth, but that's a very honest display, right? So we press on our eyes. Watch anytime the stock market does poorly. You see those stockbrokers going, oh my gosh.
Or we cross our arms, maybe, if we're feeling defensive, or we might brush our head if we're grieving.
But yeah, in fact, I was watching today this video of this rapper. There was this horrendous event in the United States. A lot of people were killed. And if you watch the rapper, he's massaging his forehead, touching his forehead. Let me say this about crossing the arms, because I did an article for Psychology Today. Everybody thinks that's a blocking behavior. It's not. It is a self-hug. We do it when we're waiting. We do it while we're listening to speakers. We do it when we're angry because it's self-comforting. And so there's a lot of people out there in business that say, well, don't cross your arms because it puts people off. You have no science to back that up.
Except that if people assume that it is a defensive or blocking action, then it probably is a good idea not to do it because it would be interpreted as such.
They may, but the fact of the matter is that it's a comforting behavior. And just because it's people say that it's one thing, it doesn't mean that it is. I mean, I remember when I was running mock juries, and jurors said, well, the guy touched his mouth when he was talking, and that's a lie. I go, where'd you get that? Everybody does that. I do it all day long. Well, I read it somewhere. There's that danger too. But rest assured, and the articles are out there, humans cross their arms mostly as a comforting behavior, even when we're angry, and even if there is a lot of junk out there.
Don't forget, of course, psychological comfort is a huge component of this book. Before we finish there, let's talk about action. And action, if you get it right, you want it to be pro-social, you want it to be ethical. Talk us through action in the context of becoming exceptional.
Yeah, the one attribute that stood out, it's not, like you said, it's not just that it's pro-social, that it's beneficial for others. It is that it is quick and it is efficient, if not perfect. And the exceptional stand out because their action is immediate. And one of the interesting things from some research that was done a few years ago with 11-month-old babies was that 11-month-old babies, when there was an inanimate object that did something for their benefit, babies were more inclined to go to that object that did something for them more quickly than their own parents. It's a fascinating thing that whoever marshals the resources the quickest for us, the greater the psychological comfort. So it's not just doing the right thing, it's doing the right thing quickly. And the minute organizations figure this out, right? We've all been on those telephone loops where we press 5, press 3, press 2, press, boom. You just get tired of this nonsense. What they don't realize is they're creating psychological discomfort, when if they just had a human there that would said, I'll put you right through, that would create psychological comfort. Speed is the one attribute that sets these individuals apart. And, people ask me, well, when you looked at Leonardo da Vinci, he's the artist, all right? He is the greatest of all time. He's the GOAT. Why wasn't he exceptional? Because he hadn't fulfilled at least 9 contracts. He wasn't following through. He wasn't delivering. He had promised things and he never delivered on them. He was being sued. If he was rated today, he'd be getting 2 stars. The guy's not delivering. That's just something that is not acceptable. And so when we look at exceptional individuals, they deliver. They deliver quickly, pro-socially, and of course, ethically, as you well.
We all know, just picking up on that last word there, ethically, we all know that some people, true colors emerge when they're under the greatest stress. Or even if they're not their true colors, that their standards at least drop when they're under pressure. Now, you've been in countless high-pressured situations involving other people's welfare and your own safety. How do you manage to get ethics right in those circumstances, when it's really on the line, when you're really being put to the test?
No doubt. That's a great question, because look, I'm touching my eye. That's how much stress that causes me, because I think of so many instances where we had high stress situations. I remember we had to get a flyer out. We were looking for a child that we thought had been abducted interstate. And typical bureaucracy, I go to the Xerox room where the photocopier machine is, and there's someone ahead of me who's doing the Christmas notification for the office, and it's like, I got something. I'll just be done in a minute, and it's everything you can do to keep yourself sane, because you just want to move that person aside and their little project and say, this really matters. And we've all run into those things where it challenges us. I think it's not so much that we do things perfectly. I think it is that we then take the time to be introspective. The other thing that all these people have is the ability to be introspective and say, all right, you weren't very nice to her when you say, I don't give up about your Christmas. We have a missing girl. That you go back and you say, how could I have done it better? And maybe that's the secret to it all, that all these individuals I talk to, you somehow sense that they've all screwed up, but they went back and revisited that and figure out a way to do it better the next time.
Now, you use another quote in the book, which is, again, something along the lines of, watch your thoughts because your thoughts become words. Watch your words because they become actions. Watch your actions because they become habits, and so forth. Now, I'm not talking about thoughts in the context of anxiety, which some people suffer, including me, and intrusive thoughts, which don't by any means necessarily become actions. But I'm interested here in habit. And we talked again earlier in the green room about the muscle memory of certain self-defense moves. Mm-hmm. How important is it to remember that our actions in the end kind of come to define us, and that we've got to try to get ourselves into good habits if we're going to become truly exceptional?
Fantastic question. And by the way, I too have suffered from anxiety and depression based from my work. And please, if you're out there and you need help, go get it, because there is help. There's no shame in it. I thought years ago, 20 years ago or 30 years ago, that was something shameful, and it's not. I think to answer your question, when we look at any situation, right, and we're looking at what we do each day, our actions. When we get up from bed, that's an action. What we do for the next hour, for the next 2 hours, those are individual acts. Somebody that read the book recently emailed me and said, it does change your life if you wake up 30 minutes earlier. You seem to have a little bit more time. And so small steps to begin to change when you wake up, what you read. I know people that only read the same thing all the time, the same area of thought. What if one day you're reading about ancient mariners, and the next day you're reading about how wine was made 5,000 years ago, and the next day you're reading about history, and the next day you're reading about pottery in the ancient world. I don't care what you read, but if you don't train yourself to expand your knowledge, you're going to go into, and this is one of the problems I see in society today, is everybody, not everybody, but so many people are looking through this narrow hose, and it seems like they're just reading the same thing, and they're not creating the opportunities to then practice other things, so that what we practice each day, what we think each day, then becomes our character. It becomes our habits. It becomes what we can become. And we are the only ones that are responsible for that. You can't blame that on school. You can't blame that one on your parents. It's up to you.
Let's finish with psychological comfort. We've talked about it a bit already. Why is that so important? What exactly do we mean by it? Just remind us. And where does it fit in on this ladder to exceptionalism? And I should also just say, given it's my last question, that I get the sense from you that exceptionalism isn't about being competitive. It's not about trying to be better than other people. It's about trying to make the most of yourself.
And beautifully stated. What is your full potential? What if you go through life and you haven't reached that full potential because people have set limits on you? It's like that runner that I ran to in San Francisco, and who was from Kenya or Ethiopia, I forget right now, but I said, why why are there so many great runners? Like the last person yesterday that won the Boston Marathon, why are they all from the same area of the world? And he answered, and I don't know if it's true, but this was his answer. He says, when we were growing up, we didn't have media. We didn't have newspapers. Nobody told us what the limits were. We just ran. We ran fast, and we ran every day. You mean you didn't have a coach telling you, oh no, you're only running 8 miles today, and don't push yourself too hard? And there were no limits. And I look at people and I say, you don't know your own potential. And when I see them break out, it's so wonderful. Psychological comfort. When you look at the human brain, and I have studied it for a very long time, and I had great teachers that have taught me over the years. What is the essence? What we call that being equipoised, what we call homeostasis, that wonderful state in which everything is in balance. That's psychological comfort. And anything that destabilizes that causes us stress, causes the release of cortisol, causes us to be unsteady, right? You get into an argument, and all of a sudden, it's only 30 minutes later that you remember all the clever lines you should have said. But in that moment, you can't remember one Churchillian word to say, right? You know, he was great. He would practice. So when finally somebody said to him, you know, if you were my husband, I'd give you poison. And he retorted, if you were my wife, I'd take it. You know, when you're stressed, you can't think of those clever lines. The human brain, a baby, thrives when there's psychological comfort. And that's why, you know, I don't know if you've heard of the Kangaroo Method, which is as soon as the baby is born, you place that baby naked on the mother, you swaddle them together so that they feel the warmth, they feel the touch, everything comes together. And this was discovered by a doctor in Colombia. And it helps to get the baby to feed. It helps the baby to be more resilient to diseases and all sorts of things. This is the power of psychological comfort. The more we have it in our lives, the more comfortable we are, the more we enjoy things. The less we have it, the more stressed, the more, we'll use an ancient term, no longer used, neurotic, the more anxious we are, the less well we sleep, and so forth. And so whether it's in our personal life or it's in the corporate life, whoever achieves that psychological comfort is, as Shakespeare would say, the soonest winner.
And I would say, look, I know that this book was born out of 10 years ago or so, as you say, studying really bad examples of humanity. I'm so glad that something positive has emerged from all that. You've obviously done a lot of good in law enforcement, but it's great that you're still such an optimist and you can see the good in us and you can see the potential and you want us to reach our potential. So I've really enjoyed the last hour. I'm very grateful to everyone for coming. I'm really grateful to you, Joe, for spending your time with us from there in Florida. Your book is available. People can get a copy of it, Be Exceptional. And it is within our grasp.
It really is. And I thank you for this opportunity, because nothing thrills us as much as seeing the full potential of a child or a mind or a person who all of a sudden takes flight as they never imagined.
Joe Navarro, thank you so much.